How far are you willing to go to clear your name?
Oh, I'll go as far as, I've gotten to this point.
Are you willing to go to jail?
Of course. But the thing is, anyone who jails me at this point is only going to be complicit in this cover-up.
I mean...
That's the way to get rid of me, right?
In 2003, most of the al-Qaeda action was in Iraq or Afghanistan, but surprisingly, according to intelligence officials, Italy, and specifically Milan, had become a hotbed of Islamic extremism. In the late 90s, Italy granted asylum to a significant number of immigrants fleeing persecution from their home countries. Among them were a small number of Islamic extremists who became known as the Milanese Network, individuals suspected of financing international terrorism. One of the most high-profile of these extremists was Hassan Mustafa Osama Nasser, also known as Abu Omar, an Egyptian who was tied to a Sunni Islamic group designated as a terrorist organization by Egypt. The mosque behind me is where Abu Omar spent the majority of his time. He was effectively the head imam or religious scholar here. And it was here just after 9/11 that he was giving fiery, incendiary speeches that put him in the crosshairs of both the Italian and the American intelligence agencies. On February 17th, 2003, Abu Omar disappeared off a street in Milan. So Abu Omar is walking down this very street on his way to the mosque for noon prayers. He's stopped by an Italian police officer who's also a CIA informant. And during this time, Abu Omar fails to notice that there's a white van parked directly behind him. Door to the van slides open. Two hands reach out, grab him, rip him into the vehicle, door slams shut, and he disappears.
Praticamente subito fu chiaro che questa persona non era scomparsa volontariamente, ma era stata sequestrata.
Armando Spataro is a veteran terrorism prosecutor in Turin who spent years investigating and prosecuting Italian mafia figures and leftist terrorists before probing Abu Omar's disappearance.
Ci furono dei testimoni che descrissero il fatto che Abu Omar era stato preso e messo in un furgone. Le indagini, dopo pochi mesi, si indirizzarono verso la CIA.
Through extensive use of cell phone mapping and hotel and credit card receipts, Spataro was able to determine that agents from the Central Intelligence Agency were responsible for the extraordinary rendition of Abu Omar. Inside the CIA, this operation was known as the Italian Job. What the CIA did was bold. They snatched a guy off the streets of Italy in broad daylight. But they were also sloppy, and they left behind a trail of breadcrumbs. With hard evidence of CIA involvement, Spataro did something completely unprecedented in the global war on terror. He sought indictments and won convictions against 23 Americans. It stands as the only successful prosecution against the CIA in connection with the agency's controversial rendition, detention, and interrogation program.
22 former CIA operatives and 1 U.S. Air Force Colonel Wolf are now convicted felons in Italy.
They are in no jeopardy as long as they are inside the United States, but if they were to leave, they are potentially at risk for being jailed and brought to Italy.
One of those Americans convicted is Sabrina de Sousa, a veteran CIA counterterrorism officer who was stationed in Milan. What should we know about Sabrina de Sousa's involvement in the rendition?
A suo carico ci sono importanti elementi di responsabilità nonostante lei dica il contrario. Lo dico soltanto che Sabrina de Sousa poteva venire a difendersi dinanzi alla corte italiana. Ha scelto di rimanere latitante. Lei o altri condannati in Europa, dovrebbe essere arrestata.
In fact, de Sousa is in Europe, and she's not taking any steps to conceal her presence here. De Sousa, a dual U.S.-Portuguese citizen who resigned from the CIA in 2010, has been stuck in the United States. But earlier this year, she decided to take a risk. She traveled to Morocco and then made her way to Portugal, despite the fact that there was a European arrest warrant issued for her. De Sousa said she was falsely implicated in the Abu Omar rendition. She's accused high-level CIA officials of knowingly carrying out an illegal rendition on Italian soil and leaving her high and dry to take the fall. Taking on the CIA is a dangerous task, and it's taken a heavy toll on D'Souza. Isolated from family and friends, unable to work, living under the anvil of an arrest warrant, she's now planning her next moves in an effort to clear her name. She's in Portugal to meet with top European government officials and human rights attorneys, who she hopes will pressure prosecutors into launching a new investigation into the Abu Omar rendition. It's a risky strategy that could reignite a political firestorm between the US, Italy, and their respective intelligence services.
I've been very vocal in the last few years about this entire rendition and the need for accountability and to clear my name. The reason I decided finally to come to Portugal was because it was a goal of mine, and I didn't see any reason why some of the CIA leadership who were responsible for my not being able to come to Portugal did not put their big boy pants on, assume responsibility, and resolve this issue once and for all.
None of the CIA officers who were convicted ever served a day in jail. That's because Italy never sent the US extradition papers. Still, D'Souza claims that she's been living in a different kind of prison, barred from traveling overseas and fearing she would never be able to see her family again.
Emotionally for me, this was almost like a roller coaster type thing. In September 2005, I got a call at 11 o'clock on a Saturday saying my father was in the intensive care unit in India. And I was ready to turn in my badge. I called someone at the headquarters who was working on a Saturday. I said, I'm going, and I'm going through France. And I left. I got to India, walked into the hospital as the priest and two others were coming to read the last rites to my father. And then I came back, and I was like, okay, you know, I know, this is it. And I really didn't care because my family was really important. And then my father passed away. Then I got indicted in July of 2006. And again, my mother was 80, and I thought, there's no way. So I said, okay, why don't you get my mother here for Christmas? I mean, this is the least they could have done for me. If they did even that much for me, perhaps I wouldn't be here today trying to fight this.
When did you join the CIA?
In the 90s.
And
then I was assigned to Italy. It was my first tour.
Why? What compelled you to join the agency?
Actually, it was just a very almost lame reason I needed a job. Actually, at the end of the day, I was married to an agency officer at the time, and I just thought what he was doing, you know, sounded interesting. He didn't tell me everything he was doing, but I just thought that whole area was kind of interest to me.
Or who was Abu Omar?
Well, I think he popped on the radar not so much for what he had done in the past, because, you know, in the past he had been to Albania, Germany, left from Egypt, and left under cloud and from all these different places. But that was not taken into consideration because he was granted political asylum. There was no pending arrest warrant for him anywhere, not in Egypt, not in Albania, nowhere. He had a checkered past, but nothing that resulted in an arrest warrant. It was all supposition, you know, suspected of maybe he did this, but there was nothing stuck to him, obviously, if there was something concrete, which is why he got political asylum. He came to the attention because of his rhetoric at the mosque. You know, fiery speeches and from telephone taps, I guess, with the Italian police, the Digos, who had him under physical and technical surveillance. He would talk about different things. But again, I like to emphasize that he would talk about it, but it didn't concern the Italians enough. They didn't feel they had enough evidence based on what was going on there or his physical surveillance to issue an arrest warrant for him, you see? To the point that, according to Bruno Megali, the chief of counterterrorism for Digos, according to his testimony in court, they dropped surveillance of Abu Omar in January of 2003 to concentrate on other people, other suspects of interest, more of interest than he was.
How does he go from this figure that you're monitoring to someone who's a candidate for rendition?
Well, the figure that the CIA wasn't monitoring him.
The Italians.
The Italians were monitoring him. So for the CIA, again, Abu Omar was not like the only candidate. The chief of counterterrorism in Rome, again, this whole rendition was run out of Rome. The chief of counterterrorism in Rome in 2001 had come up with a list of 10 names.
So despite all of that, the agency greenlights the
Yes.
rendition of Abu Omar.
Yes.
So there's a specific agency team that does the actual snatch.
Right.
They come in from outside, and then as the internal country team, you assist them in doing that?
Yeah, not many from the internal country team were, doing, no one, wasn't like everybody from the embassy or the base. Of course, there was no one at the base as such to do that. It was the team that would come in. But again, there's also, you got to remember that the team was under the impression that the Italians were on board with this. And that's a little bit significant because when a team is under the impression and they're told that the Italians have your back, now why would you go around the country engaged in the highest level of tradecraft? You see, the team got convicted on what? Sloppy tradecraft. That was the narrative that went all over the place. Sloppy tradecraft, the CIA and all the rest of it. Why would you do that? Because if you do that, then the host country who's supposed to have your back is going to look around and go like, what are these guys doing? Are we out of the loop on something? You know what I mean? They were told that. They were told, the host, Italians have your back.
So you thought you were operating with the consent of the Italian government, the Italian intelligence services?
Well, the team did.
Right. You claim that you were not a significant part of this rendition.
Oh, absolutely not. I wasn't even part of the rendition at all. I was not there. I was skiing that week because it was White Week. And because I wasn't in charge of it or any of that, I went off to the ski vacation. So absolutely, and that's what I've said all along, though. In all these years, I've said one thing. The charges against me are groundless. I want to be able to live freely again. And this thing has gone on way too long.
And what was your role?
Well, my role was earlier on. So I was the translator between the Italians and the team. Most of my career was spent in the counterterrorism center.
And so you were operating undercover?
State Department, what's called declared to them. They knew who I was.
The Italian prosecutor claims that you were the mastermind.
I know, but what's the evidence? Where's the evidence? That's the thing. Where is the evidence? And my attorney proved in court that it's not possible for me to have been the mastermind of this whole thing.
Le dico soltanto che non solo nel sequestro Bomà, ma in qualsiasi tipo di reato, anche un furto di un'autovettura, il responsabile non è soltanto chi materialmente esegue il furto, ma anche chi ha partecipato alla preparazione. Basta, non dico altro.
But that's not it for De Sousa, who maintains her innocence. One of her unlikely allies is Ana Gomez, a member of European Parliament who has been a vocal critic of how the war on terror has been conducted.
I've worked a lot in the committee that we have set up in the European Parliament to investigate the complicity of Europeans in the extraordinary renditions program.
And how did you first become aware of Sabrina De Sousa and what she's trying to do?
Some lawyers here in Portugal also go through the documents and they confirm that possession, that she had been wrongly convicted in Italy, because of course there was a political interest in convicting a number of people, and so anyone would do. So I thought it was important to help her, and I agreed. I arranged with a lawyer that I would go to Morocco, where she was, and would travel with her to Portugal and would try to help her from here, indeed clear her name. I thought that this is also a way to help bring light into this all horrendous affair of the torture program, where not just the US administration has tremendous responsibilities, but where European governments also have tremendous responsibilities because they were accomplices. And that's exactly where we have not been able to really get a proper follow-up.
In the US, the sentiment is, this program, many of these activities, including the Abu Omar rendition, happened a decade ago, and they want to turn the page. They want to sort of close the door on this chapter. Is there a sense that the sentiment is different in Europe?
Much depends on the victims themselves, and you have Sabrina, who's also a victim fighting to clear up her name. You have the victims of torture also fighting for reparation, and we need to support them. We will support them. If the victims prefer closure, there will be closure. If they decide to speak up and fight and demand reparation, there are plenty of avenues. There are victims of the Second World War, the Holocaust, who are still going after those responsible, Nazi criminals of all sorts.
Since 2005, de Souza has been battling the Bush and Obama administrations. She's taken her complaints to members of Congress and has written letters to Secretaries of State Colin Powell and Hillary Clinton. You have tried multiple channels to get your name cleared from this incident, right?
Oh, absolutely. I had gone through every single option internally in the CIA, starting with the ombudsman, who was told to back off, the grievance office, the EEO, even offices that were probably not even relevant to anything. I was just trying to find something. And the interesting thing about Washington is how a cover-up takes effect. It's like a cancer. It starts off in the CIA, and then they involve the Department of Defense. So then it's spread to justice, it's spread here, there, and then all the way up to Congress. The US starts off with one thing alone. We don't acknowledge renditions.
Well, now that you feel like you've exhausted all your official US options, what do you do next?
Well, there are options in Europe, quite a few of them, but for now I'm looking at one option. So on the 28th of July, the European Center for Constitutional and Human Rights filed a complaint to the German federal prosecutor.
By the German federal prosecutor?
So this complaint was about the Senate torture report as well as the rendition program. And why the German prosecutor? Well, Abu Omar was rendered from Milan, taken to Aviano, and then flown to Ramstein Air Base in Germany. From there, he was sent to Cairo, Egypt, where he alleges torture. So because of Ramstein, there's a direct link with Germany, and therefore I think that the German federal prosecutor is in the best position to conduct an investigation of this. The prosecutor has universal jurisdiction, but again, because of this direct link.
The idea here is if you can get the German prosecutor to bring a new investigation, and the German prosecutor is relevant because the plane landed in Germany.
Right.
Then you hope that that will reveal new details that will clear your name?
Absolutely.
In addition to violating Italy's sovereignty, the CIA's rendition of Abu Omar had the consequence of completely derailing Italy's ongoing investigation into the cleric and other alleged terrorists. Was Abu Omar a terrorist? Was he supporting terrorist operations here as part of the Milanese network?
Quando Abu Omar fu rapito, la Procura di Milano e la Polizia di Milano stavano indagando su di lui. Stavano indagando su di lui come terrorista e sui suoi complici. Se non fosse stato rapito, lo avremmo arrestato noi e avremmo arrestato molti altri complici. Abu Omar, con ritardo dovuto al sequestro, infatti è stato condannato come appartenente a un'associazione terroristica. Ma il fatto che fosse un terrorista non giustifica che fosse stato sequestrato in Italia, che è una democrazia.
Were you surprised to learn that the Americans had conducted a rendition on Italian soil?
Ovviamente conosco benissimo la teorizzazione statunitense della War on Terror, che comprende le rendition, ma non solo le rendition. Posso soltanto dire due cose. Secondo il sistema dei diritti e delle democrazie occidentali, io non penso che sia ammissibile una pratica di questo tipo. È semplicemente illegale, è un reato. Non si chiama extraordinary rendition, ma kidnap, è un sequestro di persona. Con questo tipo di azioni non si combatte affatto il terrorismo, ma addirittura si danno ai terroristi ragioni per proselitismo, cioè per arruolare altri terroristi.
Ana Gomez echoes these same sentiments.
I will not give up efforts together with others to expose and bring to justice those who are responsible for this horrendous program that has so dramatically damaged our credibility in terms of human rights and the rule of law and democracy, and which has actually enabled the terrorists with a narrative to recruit more terrorists.
Isn't there an understanding or a tacit nod, wink, wink that if you rendition a guy like Abu Omar to Egypt, he's going to be tortured?
Absolutely. I don't know about tacit because Egypt is on the State Department's list of countries that is known to torture.
كل طرق التعذيب بالصلب كان بيمارسوها معايا، وطبعا مع الصلب تعذيب بالكهرباء. الكهرباء طبعا شيء جدا. من وسائل التعذيب ايضا مرتبه مبلوله بالميه، وهذه المرتبه متوصله بكهرباء.
So Colin Powell, who was the Secretary of State, had to approve this and did so knowing full well that Egypt is in his State Department's list of countries that tortures.
Right. So doesn't that in itself make the rendition illegal?
Not in the U.S.
Is torture by proxy illegal under U.S. law?
And that's the reason why the CIA established sending those who are captured off to other countries, because then they can go like, well, we asked for reasonable guarantees, and that's about it, which obviously doesn't happen.
Do you think this case has damaged relations between the U.S. and Italy?
Well, on the surface, they say absolutely not, but I can tell you right now, CT cooperation, absolutely. Absolutely.
Counterterrorism cooperation?
Yes.
We reached out to the CIA to ask them about de Sousa's case and the allegations she leveled against the agency, but the CIA declined to comment. We also sought comment from the House and Senate Intelligence Committees who de Sousa said she met with. Staffers told us the committees did indeed meet with the CIA to discuss de Sousa's case, but they could not reveal details about those talks because they're classified. And who ultimately signs off on a rendition like this?
Condoleezza Rice and Bush, George W. Bush at the time. And again, whether Abu Omar is guilty or not is a separate matter. My issue with this whole thing is we didn't have to take him to Egypt to be tortured. This time now, 10 years later, it is really important that this entire story be told because this case is emblematic of a broader, larger political and policy issue.
De Sousa claims that she discovered explosive details about the planning and execution of Abu Omar's rendition when she reviewed internal CIA documents while still at the agency. But she was reluctant to disclose to us what she learned. Sabrina, I don't understand. If you are willing to tell the story of what's happening and you're here talking, why not just tell the full story right now?
You keep asking me the same thing, and I'm trying to tell you that this information really belongs in front of a prosecutor. Sitting here and telling you the story will get me 3 minutes of fame. It's out there, but it will not result in accountability.
I think a skeptic would say, like, oh, Sabrina was on a ski trip when this was happening. Like, that sounds like a cover story
Oh, absolutely.
that a case officer would.
Absolutely. Yep. Case officer, absolutely. And there have been skeptics who said exactly that. But, you know, I'm not going to go bother with the skeptics on this. Again, they can say whatever they want. I already feel quite vindicated with what I've done over the last few years. And the skeptics aren't going to change my life in any way, because they're not the German federal prosecutor or any other prosecutor for that matter. So I can't please everybody.
A spokesperson for the German prosecutor did not respond to our requests about whether his office has launched an investigation.
Are you here in order to get the agency back? Your motives could be interpreted as vindictive.
Well, if I just popped up out of the blue, then people could say it's vindictive, but I have a history. I've gone through courts, I've gone through Congress, I've done what is supposed to be a proper channel. Except that I found this proper channel is aimed at making sure that abusers remain abusers and never see the light of day.
It's rare for CIA officers to speak critically and publicly about the agency's secret operations. But the fallout from the Abu Omar rendition is unprecedented. The prosecutor, the politician, de Souza herself share a common thread. They want answers and demand accountability. Yet each of them, pursuing their own agendas, threatens to reopen a Pandora's box that both the Italian and American governments want closed. In this case, de Souza, all alone, desperate to clear her name, threatening to reveal sensitive information, is playing an international chess game whose outcome is unknown. What she does next could prove to be disastrous for the CIA and for her as well.
How far are you willing to go to clear your name?
Oh, I'll go as far as, I've gotten to this point.
Are you willing to go to jail?
Of course, but the thing is, why would I go to jail? I believe that the public at this point is looking for accountability. They are looking for accountability. And anyone who jails me at this point is only going to be complicit in this cover-up. That's the way to get rid of me, right? I may disappear tomorrow. You know, who knows?